Evelyn Mercer had lived long enough to believe she understood the rhythm of life, its quiet mornings, its slow afternoons, its familiar habits that repeated year after year like a song she could hum in her sleep. At 67, she expected peace. Not excitement, not chaos, just the gentle settling of things that had once felt urgent but no longer mattered. She imagined afternoons spent listening to the wind move through the old oak tree in the front yard, evenings watching cooking shows while knitting blankets for charity, and phone calls from her son, Daniel, whenever his construction job took him out of state. But life, she was learning, had a cruel sense of humor. For the past few months, Evelyn felt as though someone had pried open a window into her private world, letting in a cold draft she couldn't shake off. It was subtle, at first barely noticeable. A shift in tone. A strange silence at the dinner table. A pause too long when a question was asked. A look her husband quickly hid when he thought she wasn't watching. Her husband, Harold Mercer, had always been a man of predictable habits. At 70, he still woke before sunrise, shaved with meticulous precision, polished his shoes even when he had nowhere special to go, and insisted on reading a physical newspaper rather than anything on a screen. There was something solid about him, something respectable, something that reminded people of a generation that valued order and dignity. But something was wrong now. Harold had begun dyeing his hair, turning the silver she once admired into an unnatural dark shade that didn't belong to a man his age. He started wearing a cologne with a musky scent too bold, too youthful, and far too out of character for someone who previously thought deodorant was good enough. He whistled as he combed his hair in the hallway mirror, a light, airy tune she had not heard since the early years of their marriage, back when desire still lived between them like a quiet flame. Evelyn noticed everything. At first, she told herself she was imagining it. Everyone changes with age. Maybe Harold wanted to feel young again. Maybe he was bored. Retired men sometimes reinvented themselves. Maybe she was being unreasonably suspicious, letting the loneliness of Daniel's absence weigh on her. But deep down, Evelyn knew the truth. Women who have lived long lives can smell danger before they see it. What bothered her most was not Harold's change in appearance, it was his destination. Almost every afternoon, he left the house to check on Lila, their 27-year-old daughter-in-law who lived alone while Daniel worked on long-term projects in Tennessee. Lila was undeniably beautiful, soft curly chestnut hair, bright hazel eyes, and a delicate grace that turned heads. She carried a sadness, too, something unspoken and tender that made people want to protect her. That tenderness had hooked Daniel from the start. And Evelyn had welcomed her into the family with genuine affection. But the years had not been kind to the young couple. 5 years of trying. 5 years of infertility. 5 years of doctor visits, tearful nights, and whispered prayers that never reached heaven. Evelyn knew the pain from the outside, but Daniel and Lila lived it every day. That alone made Lila vulnerable. Fragile. And Evelyn had been grateful that Harold tried to help around the house when Daniel was gone, fixing the thermostat, adjusting the porch lights, repairing leaky faucets. At first, she appreciated it. She even encouraged him. But then the excuses changed. She said her washing machine sounds funny, he'd say too quickly. She might have rats in the attic, he'd mumble while searching for his boots. She just needs some help, Daniel's not home. There was always a reason. Always something urgent. Always something only he could fix. The visits became longer too. A 30-minute repair trip stretched into an hour. Then 2. Then 3. Harold returned sweaty, flustered, strangely vibrant, like a man who had touched something electric. His shirt was sometimes wrinkled in a way that suggested it had been handled, clutched, grabbed, pulled. His hair was mussed. His cologne lingered too heavily, as though reapplied in haste. And Lila, sweet, hesitant Lila, began avoiding Evelyn. Eyes down. Cheeks flushed. Hands trembling when she poured coffee. That girl is hiding something, Evelyn whispered to herself late one night as she washed dishes under the kitchen's dim yellow light. She tried to dismiss the thought. She tried to believe in her husband, the man who had shared her bed for more than 4 decades. She tried to ignore the ache in her chest, the feeling like someone had placed a stone inside her heart. But then came the moment she could not unsee. One warm afternoon, as Evelyn watered the lilies beside the driveway, she noticed Harold standing by the window with a look she had never seen before: hungry, wild, unrestrained. His gaze was locked on the street. Following his line of sight, Evelyn found Lila outside her home, bending over to pick up a package. The summer sun glowed on her bare shoulders. Her loose dress clung gently to her waist. She laughed softly at something on her phone, carefree and unaware she was being watched. Harold's eyes were not the eyes of a father-in-law. They were the eyes of a man breaking every vow he had ever made. Evelyn froze. Her heart thudded. Her breath left her in a silent gasp. Harold quickly stepped back when he felt her presence behind him, pretending to adjust the blinds. She knew then. Not the details. Not the depth of it. But enough. Enough to make her nights restless. Enough to fill her mornings with dread. Enough to make her feel like the ground beneath her was shifting grain by grain. Every instinct in her body screamed that something terrible was unfolding, something that could unravel the family she had spent her entire life holding together. The cracks had formed. And they were widening. And Evelyn, though she desperately wished otherwise, could already sense what waited on the other side of those cracks. Destruction. Humiliation. And a truth that would break her. Rain in Richmond often arrived, softly gentle drizzles that kissed rooftops and murmured against window panes. But that afternoon was different. The sky darkened with a violence Evelyn hadn't seen in years, turning the neighborhood into a gray, electric landscape trembling with thunder. Lunch had barely ended when Harold abruptly stood from the table. Not calmly. Not with thought. But with the frantic energy of someone summoned. "Lila said her skylight is leaking," he mumbled, his voice too rushed, too uneven. Before Evelyn could respond, he was already pulling on his jacket, fumbling for his keys. She noticed the way his hands shook, not with age, but with adrenaline. "Harold, it's pouring." "I won't be long," he insisted. Then he was gone, swallowed by the storm. Time became a weapon. Evelyn stared at the clock. 1:42 p.m. The rain roared against the roof, heavy as fistfuls of nails. Wind rattled the porch railing. The house creaked and sighed under the pressure. Harold should have been back within 30 minutes. 40 at most. But time began to stretch unnaturally, like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. 2:20 p.m. 2:58 p.m. 3:34 p.m. Still no sign of him. Each minute clawed deeper into Evelyn's chest, filling her lungs with an ache she couldn't exhale. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside her, the storm that whispered, "You know where he is. You know what is happening. You just don't want to see it." By 4 p.m., she could no longer sit still. Her fingertips tingled with anxiety, and her heart hammered with a rhythm that felt like warning drums. She grabbed her raincoat. She grabbed her umbrella. And she walked out into the downpour. The walk that changed everything. The 2 blocks between her house and Lila's townhouse had never felt so long. Rain slapped her cheeks, soaked her clothes, stung her skin. Cars passed, tires hissing through puddles. But the world felt distant, muffled, like she was walking underwater. As she approached Lila's street, Evelyn saw it immediately. Harold's car. Parked crookedly in the driveway. Engine still faintly warm. Her stomach clenched. The front gate wasn't locked, just pushed closed, lightly, as if someone entered in a hurry. The porch light was off, but a faint yellow glow leaked from behind the living room curtains. The rain softened into a cold drizzle, as though even the storm paused to watch what came next.
Evelyn stepped closer.
The curtains weren't fully closed. A sliver of space thin as a blade exposed the room inside. She hesitated only a heartbeat before leaning in. And what she saw shattered her world. The scene no wife should ever see. On the grey fabric couch. The same couch she and Daniel helped Lila choose. Two bodies were entangled.
Skin against skin. Hands everywhere.
Breaths heavy and feral. Harold, her husband of 43 years. And Lila, her daughter-in-law, the woman she once prayed for, the girl she embraced at her wedding, were wrapped around each other in a feverish desperation that felt obscene. Lila's head was thrown back. Harold's hands gripped her waist.
The sounds, God, the sounds. Pierced Evelyn's ears like knives.
A raw, involuntary cry rose in Evelyn's throat, but she swallowed it down, trembling violently. Her hand reached for the doorknob like it had a will of its own.
Twist. Push.
Crash. The door slammed open with a blast of wind and rain, jolting the pair apart. When shame has nowhere to hide. Harold froze first, his face draining of color. His shirt lay crumpled on the floor, his belt undone, his hair soaked with sweat rather than rain. His mouth opened, but no words came, only a strangled gasp of horror. Lila grabbed a blanket and curled into the corner like a hunted animal, her eyes wide, her chest rising and falling in panicked heaves. For a long, agonizing moment, the three of them simply stared at each other.
Shock. Guilt. Rage.
Betrayal. All of it collided in the center of the room like shrapnel. Evelyn found her voice raw, shaking, but powerful.
What have you done?
No answer. Just trembling. Just breathing.
Just guilt dripping from the air.
Then the storm inside her broke loose. You, she pointed at Harold, my husband. And you, her finger stabbed toward Lila, the daughter I trusted.
My son's wife.
Her voice cracked into something primal. How long? Since when? How could you do this to Daniel? To me? To this family? Harold fell to his knees, his voice trembling. Evelyn, please, I made a mistake.
A terrible one.
It happened only this once, I swear.
Don't lie to me. She screamed.
Her hands shook so badly she had to grip the back of a chair to steady herself. She felt like her chest was collapsing inward, like her ribs were crushing her heart. Lila sobbed quietly, tears cutting lines down her flushed cheeks. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to.
Shut up, Evelyn snapped.
You knew exactly what you were doing. The bargain of cowards. After what felt like an eternity. After the screaming, the pleading, the collapsing. Silence fell.
An awful silence. A silence of broken things. Harold whispered, please, Evelyn, don't tell Daniel. Don't tell anyone.
We can fix this. It can end here. Lila nodded desperately. It was a mistake. A weakness.
It won't happen again.
Please. Evelyn felt sick. Physically sick. Her knees nearly buckled. She tasted salt, whether rain or tears, she didn't know. But one thought carved itself into her mind. Daniel. Her son.
Working tirelessly in another state.
Trying to save money for the family he thought he still had. Loving a wife he believed to be faithful. Admiring a father he believed incapable of betrayal. A truth like this would break him.
Maybe forever.
So Evelyn swallowed her agony like poison. This ends now, she said, her voice low and trembling. You will never see each other again.
You will never speak of this. You will never repeat this sin.
You will swear to Mahir, and now that this dies tonight. Harold nodded rapidly. Lila cried and agreed. The storm outside finally began to fade, but inside Evelyn's chest, a new storm was just beginning, one that would not end. The 2 months that followed the thunderstorm felt nothing like time. They felt like punishment.
Inside the Mercer home, silence swelled like thick, choking smoke.
Harold no longer whistled. He hardly spoke. His once steady hands trembled every time he passed by Evelyn in the hallway, as though he feared her judgment might finally crush him. He deserved that fear. Evelyn, on the other hand, found herself aging by the week. New lines crept across her forehead, deepening with each sleepless night. Her chest felt permanently heavy, as if her heart had grown into a stone pressing against her lungs. Each time she saw Harold's face, each time she remembered that terrible image of him and Lila, rage and grief exploded behind her ribs all over again. And Lila was a ghost. Whenever Evelyn visited Daniel's house to check on things, she found Lila strangely passive, quieter than usual, avoiding eye contact as though the floor might swallow her if she looked up. Her hands fidgeted nervously. She seemed hollow, drained, a woman waiting for something inevitable yet terrifying. Even so, Evelyn didn't feel pity. Not anymore. Sin always has a shadow. And Lila's shadow grew darker each day.
Daniel comes home.
When Daniel Mercer finally returned from Tennessee, the entire atmosphere in Richmond seemed to shift. His presence always carried warmth, an easy smile, a gentle laugh, the kind of energy that softened people's edges. But this time, that warmth felt like a flame flickering too close to gasoline. Evelyn tried to mask her anxiety when she hugged her son. Her smile shook.
Her voice cracked.
Daniel noticed. Of course, wasn't oblivious, but he assumed she was simply tired. He had no idea his family was a bomb with a lit fuse. And Lila greeted him with a trembling smile and watery eyes, clinging to him longer than usual. Daniel mistook her guilt for love. He cupped her face and whispered things like, "I missed you, and everything's going to be okay now." Evelyn watched this from the kitchen doorway, her nails digging crescents into her palms. She wanted to scream.
No, nothing is okay. Nothing will ever be okay again.
But she said nothing. She had made a promisee, terrible, misguided promisito, keep the secret buried. The announcement that broke the world. The next evening, they all sat together for a welcome home dinner that Evelyn forced herself to prepare despite her shaking hands. The table was quiet, padded with tension so thick it could smother the air. Halfway through the meal, Lila placed her fork down. "Daniel," she began softly, her eyes shimmering, "there's something I need to tell you." Her voice quivered. Her fingers twisted in her lap.
Evelyn froze mid-breath.
Daniel reached for her hand.
"What is it, sweetheart?"
Lila inhaled sharply, as though preparing for a plunge she couldn't reverse. I'm pregnant." The room spun. Evelyn's throat closed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Daniel shot up from his chair, so suddenly it almost toppled. "Yuri, what? Pregnant? Are you serious? Are you really?" His voice cracked with joy so pure it hurt to hear. He pulled Lila into his arms, lifting her off the ground and crying openly. 5 years of longing poured out of him, years of crushed hopes, endless medical tests, silent despair. "It's finally happening," he whispered into her hair. "We're finally going to be parents." But across the table, Evelyn's spoon slipped from her hand, clattering against her plate as her world tilted.
Her mind raced back to the storm. Back to the couch. Back to the skin, the sweat, the betrayal. 2 months. It had been exactly 2 months. Her eyes moved involuntarily toward Harold. His face was pale, his lips trembling, his pupils dilated with dread. He knew. She knew. And Lila? Lila avoided Evelyn's gaze entirely. That silence confirmed everything. The child Lila carried was not Daniel's. The DNA trap. The next morning, Evelyn acted before her courage could fail. Lila, she said stiffly, will go to the medical center today.
For what?
Lila whisperet.
For testing. For the baby. Early screening. Then, softly but with steel beneath the words. And for DNA. Lila's face drained.
Zwei Don, think.
You will go, Evelyn said, because Daniel deserves the truth. Even if the truth destroys him. Lila's eyes darted around like a cornered animal, but she finally nodded. At the clinic, the nurse cheerfully explained the purpose of the blood test and fetal cell extraction, unaware of the darkness swirling between the two women. Lila's hands shook violently as she signed the consent forms. The waiting afterward felt eternal.
A slow-motion nightmare.
2 days later, the results came. Evelyn tore open the envelope in the kitchen where Harold and Daniel were present. She didn't intend to involve them at that moment, but fate is often crueler than intention. Her eyes scanned the page. Then everything inside her collapsed. Probability of biological relationship between fetus and Harold Mercer, 99.9%. Her breath hitched. Her chest tightened. Her knees weakened. The document slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the table like the execution order it was. Daniel picked it up. What's this? He asked lightly, still smiling from the night before. Then he read it.
And read it again.
And the smile died so violently it felt like a scream.
When sanity tears like paper.
Daniel's expression morphed into something monstrous, not anger at first, but confusion so profound it fractured the foundation of his mind. He looked at Harold. At Lila. At Evelyn. His voice trembled. This says the baby is Dad's. This can't be real.
This is wrong.
It has to be wrong. But the silence that answered him carried the weight of the truth. Daniel's breathing became erratic. His gestures grew frantic. He pressed his palms to his temples as though trying to keep his skull from exploding. Dad, he whispered.
Lila.
His voice cracked. Tell me this is a mistake. Tell me.
Tell me it's wrong.
Neither spoke.
Harold's face crumpled into despair.
Lila wept silently. Evelyn stood frozen, her heart breaking for the son she loved, even as the guilt she carried strangled her.
Then Daniel laughed.
A high-pitched, fractured, horrifying sound. He began pacing, stumbling, clutching the wall as he muttered to himself.
My dad, my wife, my baby, my brother? Moo moo ha ha.
He slammed his head into the wall. Once. Twice. Blood streaked down his forehead. But he didn't stop. Daniel.
Evelyn screamed. Baby, stop, please stop.
But he wasn't there anymore. He had fallen somewhere deep, somewhere unreachable, somewhere that pain had carved open. Harold lunged forward, but Daniel shoved him away with a strength born from madness. Finally, paramedics arrived, alerted by neighbors who heard the chaos. Daniel was sedated, strapped to a gurney, and taken away, eyes wide open, laughing through tears, whispering broken fragments of sentences.
My dad, my wife, my baby.
The collapse of a mother. As the ambulance disappeared down the street, Evelyn felt the world tilt. Her chest tightened sharply, pain exploding across her ribs. She grabbed the porch railing, but her grip slipped. Her body gave out. She collapsed onto the wooden boards as darkness swallowed her. The last thing she heard before losing consciousness was Harold's panicked cry.
Evelyn.
Someone call 911. But even that felt distant, fading into a void she did not want to return from. Because returning meant facing the ruins of everything she once loved. Hospitals have a strange way of amplifying pain. Their sterile smell, their buzzing fluorescent lights, their quiet hallways, everything seems designed to remind people that life can shatter in an instant. For Evelyn Mercer, the white ceiling above her blurred in and out of focus as she drifted between consciousness and the dark haze of heart trauma. Machines beeped beside her, measuring life in small, unforgiving intervals. Her chest burned with every breath. Her throat was raw from crying and screaming. Daniel was gone, physically alive, but mentally unreachable. Her son, her only child, her pride broken by a truth too monstrous to bear. And Harold, the man who once held her hand as they walked along the James River, was now a stranger whose choices had pulverized their family. But the most haunting shadow of all belonged to Lila.
Lilas Transformation.
While Evelyn remained in the hospital and Daniel was committed to a psychiatric facility, Lila's demeanor began to shift subtly at first, then with unmistakable brazenness. The guilt that once drenched her eyes evaporated like morning fog. Her trembling hands grew still. Her timid voice steadied. Her posture straightened as though shedding a heavy costume. Because the people who could expose her, the witnesses to her betrayal, were now broken, silent, or incapacitated.
Daniel, gone into madness.
Evelyn, hospitalized, weakened, vulnerable.
Harold, drowning in guilt and fear. And Lila understood something essential.
There was no longer anyone strong enough to stop her. Not now. Not while the old man was terrified of losing the child in her womb. The child he believed was the last piece of legacy he could leave behind. So she visited Harold at home, her eyes red from rehearsed tears. "I can't do this alone," she whispered, sitting on the couch where their affair had begun. "I'm carrying your child and I don't know what will happen to me once everyone finds out." Harold swallowed hard. He didn't touch her. He didn't trust himself to. "I ruined everything," he murmured.
Evelyn, Daniel, the whole family.
"But you can fix one thing," Lila said softly, placing a hand over her stomach. "You can make sure this baby isn't born into shame. You can make sure he has a father who claims him and a home to belong to." Harold closed his eyes. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was insane. But desire, guilt, fear, and ego were pulling at him from every direction.
And Lila, clever, beautiful, manipulative Lila,
knew exactly how to weave those emotions into a leash.
The night Harold gave in.
Storm clouds draped the Virginia sky again, darker than before, as if the universe itself disapproved of what was about to unfold. Harold stood by the window of his once happy home, the wedding portrait of him and Evelyn glowing faintly in the dim light. Evelyn's smile so full of love pierced him with unbearable shame. But Lila's voice echoed behind him. Her hand touched his shoulder. Her breath warmed his neck. "You don't have to be alone. You don't have to lose everything. You have me and our child." Our child. Those words wrapped around Harold's heart like a vine tightening. He turned toward her. Her eyes were wide, pleading, but beneath the softness was something sharp, strategic, unyielding. "Daniel will never recover," she whispered.
"Evelyn will never forgive you. The life you had is gone.
But we can build something new, something real."
Real. Harold exhaled shakily.
Nothing about this felt real. Yet he felt trapped inside a dream he could no longer wake from. "If we want a future," Lila continued, "we have to make it official. I have to divorce Daniel. And you." She paused, ensuring every syllable struck him like a needle. "You have to divorce Evelyn." Harold felt his throat tighten. Divorce. After 43 years.
After raising a son.
After building a life with her. But Lila was relentless.
Do you want your son, your real son, to be born without a name? Without protection?
Without a father who stands by him? Harold closed his eyes again. He saw Daniel laughing at age 6. He saw Evelyn dancing in the kitchen. He saw everything he was about to destroy. But guilt had hollowed him out. Fear had paralyzed him. And Lila had already sunk her claws into the empty spaces. "I'll do it," he whispered. Lila smiled. A small, triumphant smile that vanished the moment he opened his eyes again. The divorces. The divorce proceedings moved with shocking speed. Evelyn signed the papers from her hospital bed, her hand trembling so violently that the signature cut through the lines. She couldn't speak. She couldn't look at Harold. Her tears made small dark stains on the white documents. She whispered one sentence as Harold left the room.
"May God forgive you, because I never will."
Lila's divorce from Daniel was even simpler. He could barely recognize her face through the haze of his psychosis. He simply laughed when the lawyer asked him to sign. A hollow, broken laugh that echoed off the walls of the institution.
The wedding of shame.
Not even 2 weeks later. Before Evelyn fully regained her strength. Before Daniel showed the slightest improvement. Before the shock had time to settle. Harold Mercer, age 70. Stood at the counter of a courthouse beside
Lila Warren Mercer, age 27.
The staff clerk barely glanced at them. No guests. No rings.
No celebration.
No love. Just 2 signatures. And a vow spoken with eyes lowered in shame. When the clerk handed them the marriage certificate, Harold felt a coldness seep into his bones. He expected relief. He expected purpose. He expected something that would justify the hell he'd walked through. But instead, he felt nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Lila squeezed his arm sweetly, but her eyes sparkled with triumph, not affection. Outside, a few neighbors who happened to pass by recognized them. One woman crossed the street to avoid them. Another whispered to her friend while glaring. The whispers spread quickly. "That's his daughter-in-law. She was married to his son. Didn't you hear what happened? It's disgusting. Sinful. Shameful." Harold bowed his head. But Lila lifted hers higher.
The new household.
Moving into Harold's home was the final step of Lila's transformation. She floated through the house like she already owned every corner of it. Opening drawers, rearranging furniture, sorting through important files. Learning where Harold kept documents, bonds, account statements. Within days, she had full control over his routines. She cooked for him. She sat beside him. She whispered about the future every night. But her affection wasn't real. Her presence was calculated. Her every word was a move in a long game. Harold, for all his faults, suspected none of this. He believed her tears. He believed her tenderness. He believed her promise that their child would be the heir of everything he worked for. Evelyn would have seen through it instantly. But she was gone from his world now. Daniel would have recognized the manipulation. But his mind was lost in a fog of shattered identity. And so the house, once filled with love and family and laughter, became a quiet palace for a woman whose ambition had no ceiling. A woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. And a man who had no idea that the worst was yet to come. For a brief moment, one tiny, flickering moment, Harold Mercer believed he might rebuild what remained of his life. Not fully. Not beautifully. But something. Something to fill the hollow left behind by Evelyn's absence and Daniel's collapse. He told himself lies he desperately needed to believe.
Lila needs me. The baby will give me purpose again.
People will eventually stop talking. This can be a second chance. But beneath all those fragile reassurances, fear gnawed at him. Fear that he had chosen the wrong path. Fear that he had destroyed his family for a fantasy. Fear that the woman now living in his home didn't love him. Not even a little.
And he was right. The slow erosion of a man.
At first, Lila played her role flawlessly. She woke early, making breakfast eggs, pancakes, coffee, but often forgot to set a plate for Harold. She apologized, then did it again the next morning. She asked about his health, but her eyes wandered to her phone before he finished speaking. She hugged him when he came home, but only after checking that no neighbors were watching. And when he tried to hold her at night, she placed a hand on her belly and sighed dramatically.
"I'm tired, it's the pregnancy."
Her excuses carried the sweetness of innocence but the precision of strategy. Lila was never careless. She orchestrated everything to create the illusion of affection while slowly, deliberately distancing herself, brick by brick. Harold sensed the shift but clung to hope. Hope is the final refuge of the desperate. But hope is also blind.
The manipulation begins.
The financial conversations began subtly. One evening, Lila sat beside him on the couch, curling her legs under a blanket, pretending to seek comfort. "Harold," she whispered, "I've been thinking a lot about the baby." He turned toward her, softening instantly. Just hearing the word baby made him feel needed again.
"What about him?"
Harold asked. "I want him to be protected," Lila said, placing her hand over her stomach with a trembling softness Harold found irresistible. "He deserves a home that's secure, a future that's stable. But if anything happens to you—"
She paused.
Harold stiffened. "I'm not dying anytime soon," he said with forced humor. "No, of course not," she soothed. "But you're 70, Harold. And pregnancy is scary. I need to know that my child won't suffer if life throws us a curveball." Her voice was smooth but layered fear, softness, strategic vulnerability.
Harold swallowed. "What do you want me to do?"
She took his hand.
"Transfer the house to my name just temporarily.
Until the baby is born. After that, we'll put everything in a trust with his name on it." His brows knit. "That seems sudden." "It's protection," she whispered. "For him. For our family. For us." The word "us" wrapped around him like honey. He nodded. The first signature was given. The crumbling fortress of Harold Mercer. Once Lila realized Harold was willing to sign, the rest unraveled quickly. Within 2 weeks, the house deed was transferred to her. 2 bank accounts were changed to joint accounts with Lila listed as primary. Harold signed a durable power of attorney, giving her full financial decision-making in case he fell ill. His retirement savings were modified to name Lilan, the unborn children's beneficiaries. Each document signed was a brick removed from the fortress of his former life. Each signature pushed him closer to ruin. And Lila made sure no one outside the home ever saw the paperwork. Not a lawyer. Not a financial advisor. Not even a friend. She isolated Harold with the precision of a surgeon cutting nerve by nerve. The personality shift. Lila stopped pretending the day the last major asset shifted into her name. Harold woke up earlier than usual and found her in the living room. Not preparing breakfast, not reading, but standing by the window talking on the phone. Laughing. Softly but not with him. Never with him. He stepped forward.
"Who are you talking to?"
She clicked off the call instantly. "No one.
Just a friend."
Her tone snapped like a rubber band. "You've been going out a lot," Harold said quietly.
"I need fresh air."
She grabbed her bag. "Being pregnant doesn't mean being trapped in this house." Trapped. Harold repeated, wounded. She sighed dramatically.
Oh please, don't make this a thing. I'm tired.
She walked past him without a second glance.
Something icy slid down Harold's spine.
This wasn't distance. This wasn't stress. This was indifference. He tried to talk to her that night. But she claimed pregnancy fatigue. Then migraines. Then dizziness. Then nausea. She made herself unavailable in every way a wife could. 4 days. Then weeks.
Harold ate alone.
Sat alone. Went to bed alone. He began sleeping in the guest room. Not by choice. And Lila didn't even pretend to notice. The disappearance begins. Soon, Lila's outings grew longer. I'll be back in a few hours, she'd say.
Then return at midnight.
Where were you? He'd ask.
Stop interrogating me, she'd snap.
I'm just worried. Well, maybe don't be, she retorted coldly. She stopped touching him. Stopped smiling at him. Stopped acknowledging him unless she wanted something. Her phone became her lifeline. She never put it down, never left it unlocked, never let Harold glimpse the screen. He knew then. Not the details. But enough. He knew she was talking to someone else.
Someone younger.
Someone she didn't need to beg for money. Someone she didn't resent. But he couldn't bring himself to confront her. Because confronting her would mean facing the truth. He had destroyed his marriage, his son, and his reputation for a woman who never loved him at all.
The final extraction.
One night, Lila sat across from Harold at the kitchen table with a folder in her hand. Her expression was calm. Too calm. I need you to sign a few last documents, she said briskly.
What documents?
Just insurance updates. And a title transfer for the car. It's under your name. If something happens, I'll need to drive. Happens. Harold repeated, voice cracking.
You old Harold.
She said it without hesitation, like mentioning the weather. He flinched. But he signed. His soul had already surrendered weeks ago.
The day everything vanished.
It was a cold winter morning when Harold woke up feeling a strange stillness in the house.
A stillness too quiet.
Too empty. Lila. He called out. No answer. He checked the bedroom. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. Her closet. Empty. Her drawers. Empty. And then, his heart seized. The safe. Open. Wide open. Like a mouth mocking him. Completely empty. Cash.
Important documents.
Jewelry. The emergency funds. Gone. He stumbled into the dining room and saw it. A single sheet of paper on the table. His hands trembled violently as he picked it up. I'm leaving.
Don't contact me.
Thank you for the money. And by the way, the baby was never yours. Never even close. Don't embarrass yourself looking for us. You won't find me.
L.
Harold dropped the letter. He couldn't breathe. His chest felt like someone was crushing it with iron fists. Then he ran to his phone. He called the bank.
Account balance. $0.
He called the investment firm.
Portfolio.
Liquidated last week. He checked the deed records online. His house. The house he built, paid for, lived in for nearly half a century. Was no longer his. Lila had sold it. The new owners were scheduled to move in within days. Harold staggered backward and fell onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. His vision blurred. His breath fractured. Sweat soaked his shirt. The realization struck him with lethal force. He had lost everything. His wife. His son. His dignity. His home. His retirement. His future. And the woman he destroyed everything for had erased him like he was nothing. He crawled to the front door, opened it, and collapsed on the cold porch, weeping with the desperation of a man who finally understood the magnitude of his self-inflicted ruin. The neighbors watched from their porches. Some whispering. Some pitying. Some shaking their heads. No one approached him. No one helped. Because everyone knew one truth. Harold Mercer had written his own tragedy. And Lila, cold, cunning, heartless, had simply signed the final chapter. Lila Warren Mercer believed she was untouchable. After draining Harold's accounts, selling his house, and vanishing overnight, she felt an intoxicating thriller sense of victory she had never tasted before.
Everything she ever wanted, money, freedom, a future without the Mercer name, was finally hers.
She fled to San Diego, to a coastal high-rise overlooking the bright blue Pacific. The sun-drenched beaches, the neon-lit nightlife, the buzzing streets filled with tourists, it all felt like another world. A world clean of judgment, clean of responsibility, clean of consequences. And she wasn't alone. Her companion was a man nearly 10 years younger, sharp jawline, tattooed arms, and a reckless charm that made her feel desired in ways Harold never could. His name was Evan, and unlike Harold, Evan demanded nothing of her except money and excitement.
For a time, life felt like a fever dream.
They drank expensive cocktails overlooking the ocean. They danced in rooftop bars until their feet ached. They slept until noon, woke up tangled in silk sheets, and laughed as if the world belonged to them. But illusions are fragile. And reality always finds a way to seep in through the cracks.
The unwanted problem.
The pregnancy grew heavier. More visible. More inconvenient. Evan, who once kissed the curve of her belly, now stared at it like a ticking bomb. "You need to take care of it," he muttered one morning, lighting a cigarette on the balcony. "I told you I am not raising another man's kid." Lila clenched her jaw. She never wanted this child either. The baby was supposed to be a tool, nothing more.
A way into Harold's fortune.
Now the baby was useless weight. "It's too late for a regular clinic," she whispered. "There are places," Evan said coolly, blowing smoke toward the sea. "You pay enough, they'll do it." Fear crawled up her spine. "But it's dangerous at this stage." "Then don't make it my problem," he snapped. That was the beginning of the end. She realized then that Evan didn't love her. Didn't care. He saw her the same way she once saw Harold. A wallet. A means to an end.
A temporary stepping stone.
And like she had done before, she clung to the illusion until it crumbled. The Clinic of Shadows. It was a small building tucked behind a row of abandoned warehouses. The kind of place people entered only when their lives had already fallen apart. The receptionist didn't make eye contact. The doctor didn't introduce himself. The room smelled of bleach and hopelessness. "You're far along," the doctor muttered flatly. "We can try, but there are risks." Lila swallowed hard. What kind of risks? Bleeding. Infection. Organ damage. Death. Her hands trembled as she signed the consent form. She wasn't thinking about the baby. She wasn't thinking about Evan. She wasn't thinking about Harold or Daniel or Evelyn. She was thinking about money. About escaping. About wiping her slate clean. She climbed onto the metal table. And the nightmare began.
The moment everything broke.
The pain came instantly, sharp, tearing, violent. Her body convulsed.
Her Vision blurred.
Her ears rang. Something went wrong, terribly wrong. Blood soaked the sheets. Nurses panicked.
The doctor cursed under his breath.
"She's hemorrhaging. Get the clamps now." Lila felt herself slipping. Out of her body. Out of her sense of self.
Out of the world she once controlled.
She tried to speak, but only a choking gasp escaped. Her last coherent thought was not of regret. Not of fear. Not of morality. It was, "This isn't supposed to happen to me." Then the darkness swallowed her. A body that would never heal. Lila woke up in a real hospital. White walls glowing painfully bright.
A machine beeping beside her.
Her lower abdomen felt like it had been ripped open and put back together with fire. A doctor stood nearby, arms crossed, expression heavy. "We managed to save your life," he said. "But the infection was severe. Your uterus was damaged beyond repair. We had to remove it." The words didn't land at first. Remove. Her voice was barely a whisper.
"You'll never carry a child again." Silence. Then a sound tore out of her.
A deep, guttural, heartbreaking cry that echoed down the hallway. Not because she loved children. Not because she ever wanted to be a mother. But because something primal had been taken from her.
Something irreversible. Undeniable. Indisputable.
And with it, her identity fractured.
The lover who vanished. Evan visited once.
He stood at the doorway, arms folded, sunglasses still on. "You look rough," he muttered.
Lila's lips trembled.
"Don't leave. Please." Evan scoffed. "I'm not dealing with this."
"You a mess.
And you're broke. Two can get more money." He shook his head. "It's over." Then he turned and walked away. Just like she had once walked away from Harold. From Daniel. From everyone she had ever broken. The universe was handing her the bill.
Descent into misery.
The infection didn't stop. It spread, compromising her kidneys, her liver, her bloodstream. Doctors tried everything. But the late-term abortion, the sepsis, the internal tearing. It was too much for her body to overcome. She couldn't work. Couldn't walk without pain. Couldn't pay her hospital bills. She was transferred to a charity ward.
A dim room with flickering lights and peeling paint.
Her hair thinned. Her skin yellowed. Her bones protruded beneath papery skin.
She lay alone for weeks.
With nothing but time.
Time to remember.
The haunting. In the stillness of those lonely nights. Faces returned to her. Evelyn, crying on the floor of her home.
Daniel, slamming his head into the wall in a spiral of madness.
Harold, collapsing on his porch in agony. She whispered their names into the darkness. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would end like this." But even she couldn't believe her own lies anymore. Because she had known. She had always known. From the moment she first smiled at Harold with false sweetness. She had planned to ruin them. Now the ruin was hers.
The final breath. Rain hammered the windows one night.
A storm eerily similar to the one that began everything months before. Lila's breaths grew shallow. Her heartbeat slowed. Her fingers curled weakly at her sides. No family stood by her. No lover held her hand. No friend whispered that she would survive. She stared at the ceiling through blurry eyes. Her voice barely audible. "Mom, I messed up so bad." A nurse rushed in as the monitors began to shriek. But it was too late. At 2:14 a.m.
Lila Warren Mercer exhaled her final, trembling breath.
Not in luxury.
Not in triumph.
Not in victory. But in agony, regret, and utter loneliness. A fitting end for a woman who destroyed lives for her own gain. Epilogue: the universe keeps its balance. Harold became a homeless drifter in Richmond, wandering aimlessly with a haunted stare, muttering apologies to people who no longer existed. Daniel remained institutionalized, repeating fragments of memories like broken shards of glass. Evelyn died quietly months later in a retirement home, never recovering from heartbreak.
And Lila, the center of the destruction,
lay in an unmarked grave funded by the state.
In the end, the universe balanced itself the only way it knew how. Through consequences. Through karma. Through the unavoidable truth.
You cannot build a future on the ruins of others without watching your own collapse.